Recording in progress.
Today's daf we're going to be learning is Nedarim daf nun zayin. I'm going to start the Mishna at the top of the daf. Konam pirot ha'elu alai, konan hen alpi, konan hen lipi. So use the words konam, which we've learned already is a form of a neder. These fruits, you say. Now, I'll already preface today's shiur by saying, as we've seen in many of these dafim, there's a lot of lack of clarity about what exactly is going to distinguish this case from the other cases. How it will be distinguished, we understand, but why it's not 100% clear. Is it because you said konam? Is it because you said these fruits? So now the Mishna says, if you say konam, these fruits on me, or konam, these fruits al pi, on my mouth, for my mouth, konam hem lipi, for my mouth, right, on my mouth, for my mouth, even though it sounds like you're saying, I don't want to eat them, they're actually forbidden, not only for eating, also for benefiting. Asul, maybe because you use the word konam, which is a more general term. And not only are they forbidden to benefit from, but even if you barter with someone, you take those fruits that you specified, and then you said, I'm going to trade them for some other kind of fruit, or gidu lehem, you plant them, and then from them grow other fruits. Whatever comes out of those fruits is forbidden to you. Now, the Ran understands all of this to be that they're really considered like hekdesh, okay, sanctified items. Not all the commentaries understand it this way, but that's why we start, according to the Ran, that's why we get into something that we haven't really discussed until now, which is chilufei hen and gidulei hen, things that grow from them. But if you say shani ochel v'shani to'en, which seems more like actually eating, so there's going to be two differences. Number one, seems to be, although again, this is a debate among the commentaries, whether it's only forbidden, seems to be this is only forbidden to eat, not anything more, not other kind of benefits. But mutar b'chen, mutar b'chilufei hen, b'gidulei hen. If you say, now, the other thing that's not clear here, did you say, before you said these fruits, and here it sounds like you didn't say these fruits. You just said fruits that I'm not going to eat. Although it doesn't say you didn't say elu, it doesn't say what you said at all. That's why some commentators think you didn't say elu, and maybe that's the difference, or you didn't say konam, and that's the difference, or because you specified specifically eating, about eating these. Not so clear exactly why there's a difference. Many different commentaries offer different suggestions, as I mentioned right now. But therefore, mutar b'chilufei hen b'gidulei hen, if you trade them, the trade isn't forbidden. Okay, now, you're not allowed to trade them because you're not allowed to benefit from them. So of course you can't trade them, and of course can't sell them, and of course can't plant them. But if you did, what you planted and what you traded it for is not forbidden. Okay, like in the previous case. It's different than the previous case. Now the Mishna comes and tells us, this is all b'davar shezar o kaleh. When we talk about gidulei hen, this is when, and all these things that we discuss, whether it's permitted or forbidden, it's all when normally most things you plant, let's say you plant the seeds of them or you plant part of the vegetable, but then what happens is under the ground, what you planted gets destroyed, kind of disappears into nothing. And from there grows something new. So then really what we're talking about mainly is the mutar b'chilufei hen u'b'gidulei hen. Okay, that when you said any to'em or shani ochel, right, that I won't eat or that I won't taste, right, there also, by the way, there's different version, whether it's ani or any, which we've seen many times. The meaning of ani, that I will, really means that I won't. It means I'm taking a vow that I won't do this. So now they say, but aval b'davar she'en zar o kaleh afilu gidulei gidulin asurin. But if the object actually stays, okay, when what you planted actually remains when it grows. Okay, what's an example of this? So there's actually two types, and there's a debate which type they're referring to. And you can look this up. You can find YouTubes on it, how to plant an onion. Okay, they call it through onion sets. Okay, so you cut off the bottom of the onion where the root is, you make it, you wait till it sprouts, you put in water till it sprouts, then you plant it, and then from that grows an onion. So one onion to, right, a scrap of an onion to one onion. So if it's where the onion itself becomes part of it, it doesn't get destroyed when you plant it. It actually grows from there into an entire onion. Or onions do that, garlics. But what's a little different? Shallots. Shallots, you actually plant a shallot, and you get multiple shallots from one shallot. So it's similar, but it's that you get many, it sprouts into many, and within those many is that one shallot also that you planted. So now, since the object is actually still in existence and it doesn't get destroyed in the ground, then chilufei hen are going to be forbidden no matter what. It doesn't matter what language you use because the chilufei hen includes the original. Okay, and we're going to get back to this topic when we get to the Gemara about in the case where ein zara okale, and there's a debate whether we're talking about the shallot type where it grows into many, or the onion type where it itself is part of that one, like 1-to-1 ratio, basically, or part to one. One part grows into one. Either way, the difference is not so major for our purposes, but basically in that case, afilu gidule gidulin asurim. Now they point out two things. Number one, the gidul, in other words, even in the case where you said she'eni ochel she'eni to'em, and in addition, not only the gidul but gidule gidulehen. If you then take the next one that you grew and you plant that one, that's also going to be forbidden, even if it's twice removed, kind of thing. Now the Mishnah goes on to other cases that are similar to the first one, but a different type. If a husband says to his wife, anything you create will be forbidden to me, will be konam to me. Konam hen al pi, konam hen lipi, the same language as before, to my mouth, on my mouth. Asur b'chilufei hen u'b'gidulei hen. Not only the things she creates, but even things that grow from it. Let's say she plants, and what she planted grew into something, and then, right, anything she grows, if she replants that also is going to be a problem. Shani ochel, shani to'em, mutar b'chilufei hen u'b'gidulei hen. But if it's something, the language is, I forbid it, that I won't eat it, or that I won't taste it, then you're permitted to exchange items you exchange for it, or things that grew from it. Same thing though. This is if what you planted gets destroyed. But again, no matter what, if it remains part of it, like the onions or the shallots, then even the gidul of the gidul, right? Even twice removed, it will be forbidden. Now, other things about a husband and wife. Sha'at osa eni ochel ad Pesach. Anything you create, I will not eat until Pesach. Now, this is all about misplaced modifiers or placed modifiers. So if I say, I will not eat anything you create until Pesach, anything you create, I will not eat until Pesach. So sha'at osa any mitkaseh ad Pesach, or anything you make a nice blanket, I will not use it until Pesach. I will not cover myself with it until Pesach. Pesach, if she made it before Pesach, mutar lechol litkatzot achara Pesach. Since he said anything you make, I won't use until Pesach. The focus, the I won't use until Pesach was modifying until Pesach was modifying I won't use it. So therefore, until Pesach, he can't use it. But if she made it before Pesach, mutar lechol litkatzot achara Pesach. He then can use it after Pesach, because all he said was, I won't use it until Pesach. But if he said, Sha'at osa ad Pesach eni ochel, he said, whatever you make before Pesach, I won't eat. V'sha'at osa ad Pesach eni mitkaser, I won't cover with anything you made until Pesach. Then, asta lefnei Pesach, if she made it before Pesach, asur le'echol litkasot achar Pesach. He can't ever use that, because then the Pesach was modifying when you made it. So anything that was made before Pesach, he can never benefit from. Another case, and this is something we actually saw in Daf Tef. It'll be good review. It was a little confusing when we learned it. Hopefully the second time around, it'll be easier. I vow that you will not benefit from me until Pesach. We're standing sometime after Sukkot, before Pesach, right? So sometime, let's say October, November, December, right? Before Pesach. Husband says to the wife, you will not benefit from me until Pesach if you go to your father's house from now until the next year's Sukkot. So the condition is the entire year, and the vow is only for part of the year. Okay, the vow will kick into place based on something you might potentially do all year long, even though the vow is limited to the beginning of part of the year. So Pesach, if she goes before Pesach, asura b'hana'ato ad Pesach, then she's in fact forbidden to benefit from him until Pesach. La'achar Pesach, if she goes to her father's house after Pesach, bibal yachel. Well, then by going, she then retroactively has the vow kick in because she fulfills the condition, and then she was already, it turns out, forbidden to benefit from her husband until Pesach. So if she, in fact, benefited from him the first 6 months and then ends up going to her father's house, she basically desecrates her word by going to the father's house later on in the year. The second she goes, it turns out she was never allowed to benefit from her husband the first part of the year. So if she got benefit from him, then she basically went against what she said, right? Went against the vow, which was his vow, actually. If you benefit from me until next Sukkot, you won't benefit from me until next Sukkot. Now, in this case, the condition is the first half of the year. He says, you're forbidden to me the entire year if you go to your father's house during the first part of the year. So, in this case, now the Mishnah is focusing on one element. It's not focusing on all the elements, but what it says is, if she goes before Pesach, then obviously she can't benefit from her husband the entire year, going forward until Sukkot. But she actually is allowed to go to, what they're focusing here is, she's allowed to go to her father's house the second half of the year, because the condition was only don't go to your father's house the first part of the year, right? So because of that, she can actually go to her father's house the whole rest of the year. Okay. The Gemara had gotten off on all sorts of questions about this. Is if the condition is for later in the year, right? In the first case, is she forbidden to benefit from her husband, right? Because are we concerned that maybe she'll end up doing the condition, or do we say no? You can go benefit for your husband, just make sure not to go to your father's house the second half of the year. And we saw a debate about what we say about that. Okay, now the Gemara is going back to the issue of gidulim, and we're actually going to get a bit off topic, but really focusing on this issue of gidulim and the status of things that grow from other things in a case where ein zaro kale, where like an onion or a shallot, where the actual item is still in existence. So first they just quote the words of the Mishnah, konam konam him alpi, konam him lipi. They bring up that line for whatever reason. Now we're going to start. Yishmael ish kfar yama, va'amrela ish kfar diyama, he'ela biyado. So either Yishmael ish kfar yama or a person from kfar yama asks the following question. Batzal she'akaro b'shvi'it, unitano b'shminit. We're going to jump from topic to topic. We're going to talk about Shemitah. We're going to talk about teruma. We're going to talk about orla, which is the first 3 years you can't eat fruits from your tree, a brand new tree. We're going to talk about kilei keren, which is when you plant something in the ground next to a vineyard, like you plant crops, whether it's grains or legumes, right in the close proximity to a vine, and then you end up with crossbreed, and that's forbidden. Okay, all of these things are forbidden to benefit from. Okay, Kedusha Shvit is more that it has sanctity to it, and you have to treat it with a certain type of sanctity. There's all different laws about that. So all the others are actually going to be forbidden. Either it's teruma, and let's say you're not a kohen, or it's orla, or it's kilei keren. So now we have the following question. Batzal she'akaro b'shvi'i. So you pick this onion on the Shemitah year. So it has sanctity of Shvi'i to it. Because in vegetables, it goes by when you cut them. Unita'o b'shmini. Now you took the bulb and you planted it in the Shemitah, in the 8th year. So now the question is, you planted something that has Kedusha. What happens with what grows from it? So Rabu, now what the new growth, whatever is growing is actually doesn't have sanctity. What's the problem though? Your original onion is still there. So what about that original onion? Rabu, and now we're going to get into laws of nullification, which we've talked about many times, talk about again in our sugya. Rabu gidulav alikaro. Now at this point, this is usually what happens. You have the small part called the onion set that you planted, and now it grows into a much bigger onion. And there's way more that grew in the 8th year than that grew in the 7th year. You just have that little bit that grew in the 7th year. And here's his question. Gidulav hetel v'ikaro asur. Do we say when you have something that's growing that's permitted, and you have something that's growing that's forbidden, right? The main part of it is forbidden. Not main, but the original part. Kevan de rabu gidulav meikaro. Since all of a sudden what grew is much more than, not all of a sudden, but since what grew is much more than the original, otan gidulei hetel malin et haisur olo. Is the part that grew, which is now much greater, does it nullify the part that was originally there? So again, is the part of the onion have to be treated with kedusha, with sanctity? He went to ask Rabbi Ami, he didn't know the answer. Remember this because we're going to come back to Rabbi Ami at the end, and Rabbi Ami is going to all of a sudden come up with an answer, which we're actually going to reject, but at this point he doesn't have an answer. So he goes to somebody else, and he answers him from the following source. Told you we're going to move to teruma. You now have an onion that's teruma. You planted it. And now again, what grew is much greater than the original. Mutal. Okay, assuming there's 100 times, because teruma is nullified with 100 times against it. Usually we say batel b'shishim, 1 in 60. Certain things need more. We'll see a bunch more later today. Teruma needs 1 in 100. So if you have 100 times the amount that grew against the original, it's permitted. Okay, it's not considered teruma anymore. So it sounds like nullification works here. And then going back to the original question, it would also nullify the kedusha shvi. But either Rabbi Yomi or Rabbi Zreika said the following: Shavik martrim ba'avid kechad. They said to Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, what, did you leave 2 people's opinions aside and you took one? In other words, there's 2 people who go against what you said. So it's very nice you took one person's opinion, but there's 2 people who fight against that, and usually we follow majority. So my ninhu train, who are these 2 people? To Amar Rabbi Ava, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. The first is quoted by Rabbi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Yalda shesibcha bizkena. This is grafting. You took a branch from a young tree, which means laws of orla. It was within the first 3 years, and you grafted it onto an older tree. Uba perot, and there were fruits on the branch that you took from the tree that were orla, from the young tree. When it now grows, now it's growing as part of this big gigantic tree, which was old. So what grows on that tree is really from the old tree, not orla anymore, because clearly that branch is now nullified to the big tree that it's part of. Question is, if all these trees now, orla and kilea karam, the 2 examples we're going to get to now, are only nullified in 1 in 200. But now if you have 200 fruits that grow on that tree against that one, do you say that it's nullified? So what does this say? Now, if we said before that it would work, it should nullify it. But what does it say here? Even if it got 200 more, asul, it's still forbidden, that one orla fruit. But Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, that was 1. Now we're looking for 2 people. So Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yonatan. So we started with Rabbi Yochanan, now we have Rabbi Yonatan. But if you planted an onion in a vineyard, meaning it was kilea kerem, it was crossbred, which is forbidden to benefit from. But then you uprooted all the vines there. So now you just have onions growing. Asul, even though, we're assuming what happened here, once you uprooted the vines, tons more onions grew. And now this onion, or the onion grew much larger at that point, right? I think we're not talking about more onions, we're talking about the onion growing much larger. And now it's 200 times the size it was then. Is it still forbidden? And it is. It's not nullified here. So here you see, comes, this was Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Zreika, and said to Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, how could you go by that one opinion that says it's nullified? These 2 say it's not nullified. Okay, again, they're all different topics, but all of them seem to be saying, right, these new 2 opinions we saw, it's not nullified. Things that grow do not nullify the original. So hadarata the kamed de Rabbi Ami. So now they come before Rabbi Ami. By the way, there's also something to be said here about their significance to this. Sometimes things aren't nullified because of their importance. Now, and this is why they keep using the words ikar. Ikar means the main. Okay, and I corrected by saying it's not really main, but it's where it all started from. And that has importance because the whole thing is there because of it. If you didn't have that, you wouldn't have the onion growing. So that gives it significance that maybe won't allow it to be nullified. So now, hadarata the kamed de Rabbi Ami. So I guess Ishmael was confused, or whoever this Ish Kfar Yama was, he was confused, and he went back to Rabbi Ami, the original rabbi. Upashet leminhad. And he answered him from the following place. All of a sudden, Rabbi Ami must have done his research, and he gets an answer. The Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he also quotes Rabbi Yochanan, Litra bitzalim shetikna uzra'a. Now it's another topic. I take an amount of litra as a measurement of onions. And I took tikna. What does that mean? I fixed them. That means I took teruma and maskot on them. So basically, I'm done, right? They start off as tevel, untithed produce. Then I tithe them, the tithes I gave away. I now have this pile of fruits that are just permitted for me to eat, regular, normal fruits or vegetables. They're onions. And then zra'a, and then I planted them all. Mit aseret lefi kula. Now, I planted I guess probably like a small bit of them, and then they grew into these bigger onions. Now what happens? My group of onions that I have new onions that grew that are now obligated in teruma and maskot because they just grew. But they're made up of onions, part of them, a certain percentage of them, is onions that I already took tithes for. So if that's the case, again, it all depends. Do we say that it's still there? That's the ikar, right? And therefore, I can subtract the amount that I planted from the whole batch now. So I can take off a little bit and then take my teruma masro from whatever's left, from whatever grew new, but not from the old, because the old I already fixed. Or do I take teruma masro from the entire amount? So Rabbi Yochanan says, mitaseret lefi kula. I take it by the entire amount, which means what? Alma, therefore, otan gidulim mevatlin ikar. You can see that what grew nullifies, cancels out what was there from before, because what was there from before doesn't count anymore. It doesn't count anymore as tithe produce. It's considered untithed produce. So basically, you see that nullification works, which is going back to trying to be lenient. In the other case, actually, here it's stringent. We're going to get to that in a second. Here we're saying nullifying works to be more strict and make you pay teruma maschot, right? Do it on the whole amount. Before it was, if it's kedusha shvit and it has sanctity, can we say it's nullified and it no longer has sanctity? That's to be lenient. So it's exactly what the Gemara rejects his answer and says, Dilma l'chum rishani. Maybe just to be stringent, we're going to say it works to nullify. But when it's not stringent, we're going to say it's not nullified. When the law is stricter, if you say not nullified, then maybe it wouldn't nullify. Oftentimes we do that where we're not sure, so let's just be strict and let's go the strict way. So the strict way would be the opposite in both these cases. So then it doesn't teach you about nullification in our case, because maybe this is only being nullified in order to have the law be stricter. Whereas by us, the law being stricter would actually have us side the other way, which is it's not nullified and the kedusha is still there. The sanctity is still there. So we're still in the middle of trying to figure out this topic, and we'll have to wait till tomorrow to see. You can already see the next three words, which is elamin hada. Why don't we try to learn it from here? And they're going to quote a braita, which will start in tomorrow's class. Wishing everyone a Chanukah Sameach. We'll see you tomorrow.